Hi, my name is Catalina Rodríguez Tapia, and I am the author of Conflicted Voices of Central American Migrants. It's a book about the stripes and struggles of Central American migrants and really looking into why they have decided to leave through their stories and through their grievances, and paint a picture of what is happening so that we can really eliminate the stigma around migrants, and particularly migrants from Central America. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I am originally from Costa Rica, but I grew up in Honduras, where I lived for 18 years of my life. And that was very important to me because I think as an outsider, I was always viewing Honduras with a lot of curiosity to try to see what some of the differences were and some of the similarities. And one of the things I noticed that really stuck with me for the longest time was that Honduras had much more migration as compared to Costa Rica. And so just seeing the different reasons as to why that was the case was one of the things that I thought about a lot growing up. And I actually thought about it a lot as I was a student in college doing my bachelor's in international politics and a certificate in international development. So that's really where my interest began, were because of my background and where I grew up. I'm going to answer some questions that I have right here. So the first one is, in your book excerpt, you mentioned one of the interviewees did not want to leave their country, but the circumstance made it inevitable. How many interviewees felt this sense of loss in their country, of their country? That's a really important question. I will say that even though we want to put everyone together into one category, the truth is everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own circumstance and different reasons for why they left. Some people, I realized it was more because they thought that the grass is greener on the other side and they wanted to explore opportunities in a different place. And others, it was because they kind of had to, because they were being victimized or they were being extorted, or they knew that they would die if they didn't leave. So, that is a different reason for feeling lost in their country. There were some people that actually it was more because they admired the United States. There was one person who my friend Chris Valdez, I didn't actually speak to this migrant, but Chris Valdez, who was actually an artist, he's a producer and a director who created Olancho, a documentary in Honduras. Shout out to Chris. So he spoke to someone in Honduras who had been saving up money for the longest time because he wanted to go to the US and be part of the bike culture, motorcycle bikes. And that was the main reason for wanting to leave. And in the end, this is really sad. He couldn't leave because right before he was going to leave, he was robbed. And so they took all the money that he had been saving for the coyote to leave, which is unfortunate. But when you hear those stories, for instance, you realize, wow, really people have very, very different reasons for leaving, and it's hard to generalize. It's also why it's important to have all the stories, and for me to speak to a variety of people from different backgrounds and different places and different municipalities, because all of them are very, very different. Let's see. So in your application, you mentioned having used writing as a way to process what you observed and situations you and other people have experienced. Can you discuss this a bit more? So I have always used writing as a way of expression. I grew up writing poetry, actually. Poetry is my my first love. And it was always a way of capturing a feeling, a discomfort, a sensation that I had to express somehow, and maybe I couldn't express it in words as I spoke, or I couldn't express it in any other way. It could have been anger, it could have been frustration, and so I used poetry as an extension of that for me to analyze what was going on in my head and in my brain. So that was really my emphasis when I wrote poetry, was that. And one of the issues I wrote about the most really was about social injustices, things that I just kept seeing pop up and happen all the time, particularly in Honduras, and that just made me sad or made me angry or elicited some type of emotion in me. And so in that poetry, I thought it was really an expression of how I felt about something. However, in my book, I didn't want to talk about my own perspective only, although obviously it's an important component because I am the person who is writing the book. But I also wanted it to be about other people and what they felt or what they had gone through in their own voice, you know? And so I thought nonfiction was the best way of using that perspective from other people to really express what was going on. What doesn't change, however, is that writing for me is still about those patterns, about looking at something that just keeps happening story after story. And this is still something that's going on in the stories that I speak to. In the end, it's still an analysis of everything that is going on, except this time it's not just me, it's about the collective. And that's important to me. Another question. Where do you find yourself within the intersection of art, healing, and immigrant experience? So I think writing is a way of healing because it really helps you compartmentalize the situation people are going through. I think we forget about how many migrants, not all of them, but many of them have gone through very, very bad traumas and have really, you know, gone through things that we probably don't understand. There is trauma, there is sadness, there's fear as well involved in the migrant experience, not only because they left, but maybe they had gone through something in their home country, and maybe they take that with them wherever they go. And I think in writing this, I realized how difficult the situation for some people really is. I knew coming in that I was going to have hard conversations like that. That was something inevitable, and I was trying to prepare myself for that. But when I started to talk to the people, some people really had very difficult stories, and more than once, someone would start to cry, and I had to be like, we don't have to talk about this. We can go on and we can eliminate this portion, or if you want, we can scratch the entire interview and I don't have to use your story. However, I did realize that a lot of people did want to tell this story. One person specifically was crying, and I told her that. I was like, no, we don't have to do this, it's okay. And she told me, look, I know this is hard for me and I'm crying, but I need to tell this story because I need other people to realize what I have gone through. So in that sense, I think it's a way for her to heal, for this person, whoever it is, whoever is telling their story and who wants to tell their story. It's a way for them to heal from any difficult experience that they have gone through. And I mean, hopefully this is something that, you know, it's not just about them healing, but them being able to help others not go through the same experience, or to at least alleviate some of the problems that have caused that trauma or that pain in the person. So really in that way, that's why this book, I really think it is a way of healing, of making us realize how difficult the immigrant experience is, and hopefully having some change based on all of that. What is your earliest memory of art in your home country? So as you know, I grew up in Honduras, and I will say one of the most interesting things was seeing how every culture, every country, and not even just every country, but like every community within a country has their own form of art, of expression. And one of the things I liked the most was going to Santa Lucia, which is a part of Central America, of Honduras specifically, and it's in the outskirts of Tegucigalpa. So basically in Santa Lucia, what you see is that there are many souvenir shops and places that sell pottery and jewelry, and they have very, very interesting handmade designs, and it was really beautiful to see. And one of the things I like to see the most was the Lencas, because the Lencas are actually a community within Honduras that have very, very particular kind of forms in the pottery or in the ceramics or in the jewelry that they create. It's this thing where you see it from far away and you're just like, I know that is Lenca, you know? Kind of like you see a Guatemalan cloth, the cloth that is colorful and woven by hand, and it's just so beautiful. And you see it from far away and you're like, oh, that's from Guatemala. I know where that's from. So that's kind of how I felt about the Lenca things that I saw in Honduras. And I think this really does was one of the forms of art that I saw the first time that I was just very curious about and that I really enjoyed to this day. I still have some Lenka things of my own, actually. So I think that's one of the things I saw in my home country that I loved in terms of art. So how does your roots or background inform your notion of healing? That's a very deep question, because I think we all have different ways of healing. Mostly in my particular perspective, I always liked using writing as a form of healing, because I thought it was the only way that I can express something and I could psychoanalyze it at the same time. But I think everyone has a different way of expressing their emotions and coping with certain feelings that they're having in the moment. I think in my particular case, if you think about my background, I am Costa Rican, which is important, but I also lived in Honduras, and I also saw, I always lived like this dual life where I was like, where am I from? Who am I really? What is my identity? Not in a bad way. I never felt bad about it or even remotely embarrassed, or nothing of the sort. It was more like I always felt like I had a little bit of both, and it was hard to combine them almost. But in having that perspective of someone who is from both these countries, I always felt the need to help both countries somehow or another. And in particular in Honduras, I just felt like there was a lot that I needed to do. And I think part of why I wrote this book was because I wanted to give back to the country that had seen me grow, and the reason, that I am where I am today. I don't think I would be who I am if I had lived in Costa Rica my entire life. So I think that background of mine is very important. But if you see it in like a more macro perspective and thinking about it in the collective of what Central America is, I think there's a lot of Hondurans that are not just Hondurans, Central Americans that have this collective trauma almost. There's like years of struggle that have been going on in Central America. There has been conflict, there has been war, and many of the issues that we saw back then are still happening today. There's still violence, there's still inequality, there's still poverty. Many of the things that were contested and that actually led to the beginning of the civil wars or to the conflict are existing, and unfortunately, the people of these countries are the ones who are experiencing it the most and the ones who are being affected by it. So I think, in a way, because I know this, and even though I don't think I particularly have been affected directly, because in my livelihood, I do feel the necessity to empathize with that and somehow express it to other people so that they also empathize with this and continue this kind of notion that migrants, they don't just leave because they leave because they are going through a difficult situation. And in particular, the case of Central America, where, as I said, it's been a historical phenomena that we just continue seeing, and we need to know about it. People need to know about it. So I hope that I do raise that awareness somehow through my book and through my writing, and help these people who have gone through this collective trauma and these collective problems for them to heal. That is another question. And the last one, what legacy do you want to leave behind with your book and with your work? So I believe that writing is also a way of people to change their mindset. And a lot of work has been done in the issue of migration, for sure. There has been a lot of research and policy reports, and it's an important topic that people talk about a lot, particularly in terms of Central America. But I also think that it's important for us to understand the Central American migrants' perspective. So if anything, what I would like for people to end up having with my book is a change in how they view migration, for it to not just be about the numbers or the policy or what are we going to do about the problem, but about the people, because it's the migrants themselves who are leaving. It's about them. Like, they are the central character, they are the protagonists, and I think we forget that a lot when we talk about migration. So if we can redirect the question and redirect the issues so that they revolve around the migrant and include them in the discussion, in the narrative more, we can have a change in how we view everything, or how we do policy, or how we even talk about migrants, so that we don't talk about them with this negative stigma that often is linked to migrants, but we talk about them as the humans that they are and the issues that they have gone through. So if I can do that to even one person, if even one person can be convinced that that they really go through these difficult situations, I will be very happy. So those are the questions, and I am very happy to have been talking to everyone through here and talking about these issues and about my writing. That is my form of expression. Thank you so much to Maribel for this platform, and thank you also for all her efforts with Love for Immigrants. I think this is really important because really immigrants deserve this voice and this platform to become and thrive and improve, and really, show how important it is that their story continues, and that they achieve their goals, and that they express themselves. And so because of all this, I thank you.